Game Time with Boomer Esiason.
This week's guest is the 21-year veteran of the Dallas Mavericks and 14-time NBA All-Star, Dirk Nowitzki.
Today's guest is the only player in NBA history to play 21 seasons with the same franchise. That's amazing. He was the first European to be voted the league's most valuable player, and he's a member of the NBA's 75th anniversary team. It's my pleasure to welcome 14-time All-Star and Surefire Hall of Famer Dirk Nowitzki to the show. Dirk, it's great to see you, great to meet you, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. This is exciting.
You know, this past June, before I get into your career, you were named special advisor to the franchise by Mark Cuban. And so what exactly does that entail? And did you have anything to do with hiring Jason Kidd as the head coach?
Well, it was busy this summer, you know, when we made a coaching change and we made a GM change. So that was a busy time. But it's been sort of quiet ever since. I got involved a little bit with free agency. But honestly, I think I wasn't ready to really full-time commit and really be there on a day-to-day basis. I think I'm just enjoying retired life. We have 3 little children. We travel a lot. So I wasn't ready to really jump in on a full-time role. And so that's why I like this right now, where I can, when I'm home, I can bring in my experience. I can learn some behind the scenes stuff in the management area. But when I do like to travel, when we do travel with the kids, then I'm not, then I don't have to be here at all times. So right now it's a perfect match for me and my situation.
Well, I was going to say, if anybody needs a vacation, it's you. 21 seasons, 1,522 regular season games, 27 playoff series, which added an additional 145 games, plus all the practices, all the traveling. Did they ever mention load management to you when you were playing?
Well, I'm old school still. Back in the days, we didn't really look at that. Once I was in my 30s, I think that became more of a deal. But in my 20s, I try to take pride and play all 82. To me, that was an honorable thing to do. And so I think I want to say 4 or 5 times I managed early in my career to play all 82. And it felt good to know that you're out there for your team and for the organization, for the fans, and represent basically at every game. That was always my goal.
You got there in '98, and ownership change happened 2 years into your career there with the Mavericks, and Mark Cuban took over. So the question that I would have for you is: he as great an owner as he seems to be to go to work for?
He was definitely super hands-on, which was a change at the beginning for us. He was at every practice. He was on every flight. He went to every road game. He was at every game. He was very hands-on and very active. And, I think as he gotten older, then, he had kids himself. I think he's a little more laid back now, but he's just an owner that loves it, loves the sport, loves the franchise. He loves being involved. He thinks, his knowledge is up there. And so he's as involved, if not more involved than any other owner you will probably see.
All right, we're just getting warmed up with Dirk Nowitzki. Stay with us as Game Time continues right after this. Welcome back. We're with Dallas Maverick legend Dirk Nowitzki. Your dad was a team handball player. Dirk, it was your mom and your sister who played basketball. Did you think basketball was for girls when you were growing up?
I did. I thought it was a little soft, and handball is a really tough sport, and you can kind of shove somebody out of the air. You can clamp, you can hold. And so when I first transitioned to basketball, everything was a foul. I couldn't do anything. The dribbling was different. We used to more pat the ball down in handball, and all of a sudden you see the guys, you can kind of shovel the ball. There was some differences to it, and so I stuck with handball. That was kind of my first sport. And then, but the transition was easy for me because I was tall. I had a good hand-eye coordination, and I had a good touch. So I love basketball better. I love being around tall guys. I was super tall, and then I was all in probably around age 15.
Yeah, and that's when I guess it was a coach who was on the German national basketball team who kind of discovered you. Is that right?
Yeah, so I had a youth game somewhere, and afterwards was a game like a lower division type game, and a legendary player played on one of those low division teams, and I didn't know him really at the time. I had just really started playing basketball, and he was the captain of the '72 German Olympic team. And so after the game, he came up to me and asked me, "Hey, who's practicing with you? Who does skill work with you?" And I said, "Who's this guy?" I mean, nobody really. I just have team practice 2 or 3 times a week. And so and then the next year, he showed up at my family's house and said, "Hey, if you guys are really interested in basketball and you want to take it to the next level, I'd love to work with Dirk and make him a really good player." And that's how the whole thing started. I said, "Sure." We just started, once a week, maybe twice a week in the evening. And then I started seeing great progress, and I got better and feel for the game and the jump shot. And so then we started to work more and more, and, worked with him through my whole career. And we're still great friends and my mentor. And he was the biggest influence on my basketball career for sure.
So tell me about some of the unconventional training techniques that he would put you through at your size.
So he only believed really in body weight stuff. We did a lot of handstands and push-ups, and we did some rowing, and we did some fencing for the footwork. And so all stuff that I don't think anybody ever thought about, but it was just his unconventional methods of me getting stronger and getting better physically without being in the weight room and lifting tons and tons of weight. So that was his approach of getting better, getting a little stronger by just doing games and body weight stuff. And so he even wanted me to, treat the game less like a robot, and just, he wanted me to dance and feel the game. So one time he brought his friend who played the saxophone. So he sat there during my individual practice and played the saxophone for an hour. And I'm dribbling, trying to dance the game and dribble to the beat. I mean, it was so, I don't even want to see the film because I'm sure it was so awkward. But that's some of the stuff that he tried, and it worked pretty well. But obviously I had to buy into all that stuff.
It's amazing. As a teenager at a Nike Showcase basketball tournament, you dunked over Charles Barkley. Now, I'm assuming Charles was in the NBA at this time, and because you were younger than Charles. Did you realize who Charles was and what you had just accomplished?
Yeah, so at that point, I already graduated high school, and I was in the Army, which was mandatory at the time. I did a 10-month stint in the Army. And Nike put a little team together with Jason Kidd at the time, Gary Payton. There was a lot of great players. Charles was on the team. They played 2 games in Germany, and I was invited for both of these games for a little German select team. And, I mean, it was amazing. At this point, I was already a huge NBA fan. I was probably 18, 19. Huge fan, knew all these guys. Charles was one of my heroes, so it was an unbelievable feeling just to be on the same court with these guys. And then Charles afterwards in the press conference said, this Dirk kid's not bad. If he really wants to, I can get him into Auburn. And at the time, I'd never even heard of Auburn. But that was I guess my name come out of Charles's mouth was already such a compliment, and I really took that as motivation to really work hard.
Well, I'll tell you what, you worked hard and you took it to another level. And we're going to return with Dirk Nowitzki right after these messages. The 2005-2006 season was special for Dirk Nowitzki, and not just because he won the three-point shooting contest at the NBA All-Star Game. The Mavericks were on the verge of squandering a 3-1 lead and losing the Western Conference semifinals to their intrastate nemesis, the Spurs. But Nowitzki's clutch three-point play forced overtime, and the Mavs advanced. Dirk, I remember that shot. You had this weird thing about falling back and sticking your leg out. Would you consider that like the greatest shot of your career?
We were up all game, and second half they made their run, and took the lead with a Ginobili three from the wing. And here we thought it's all over, but there was still some time on the clock, and I made that play to tie it up and force overtime. So, yeah, looking back at my career, still one of the best plays that I've probably done.
For sure. In the NBA Finals that year, you played Miami for the first time. And, like, you guys were ascending, like you were talking about, and you always had to get over the Spurs, or the Lakers had Kobe, and you had so much to deal with the Western Conference. I don't think people realize it. And when I was looking back at it, I was like, man, oh, man. I mean, no wonder why, it took you guys so long to get where you finally got to. But you had this 2-0 lead against Miami, the first Miami team, without LeBron. And then all of a sudden you had this lead in game 3, and then you lost the lead, and it kind of everything slipped away from you. Was there a signature point or moment in that game 3 where you lost it?
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of the most epic collapses, unfortunately. I think maybe the whole moment for us was a little too big. After game 2, we won both home games. The Dallas Morning News here already printed the parade route in the newspaper. So that was the first mistake that already happened. But then in game 3, we still were under control. And then they stepped up their pressure a little bit at the end, and we kind of folded under that. We made some mistakes, and then really that gave Miami the confidence that they needed. And we didn't respond the right way. Got blown out in game 4. Game 5 could have gone either way, and then they ended up coming back here and winning on our home court. So, I mean, obviously, if you lose in the playoffs every year, it's disappointing and frustrating. But that loss was one of the worst of my career, and I'll never forget it. Of course, even though we got redemption a few years later, but that 06 final is a tough one.
Yeah, you had so many things go on in a 21-year career. It's amazing trying to figure out the points in your career that you remember from a good standpoint and from a negative standpoint. Now, one of the good standpoints, you won 67 games the next year. You were the MVP of the league, but yet you lose to Golden State, who was the 8th seed. And then they have to give you the MVP trophy after losing that series. What was that moment? That had to be like a weird moment for you.
Yeah, you're bringing up all the tough ones.
I'll get to the good ones. Don't worry about it.
That was another heartbreaker. I mean, after the 06 finals, I was really frustrated for a few weeks. But then I was like, you know what? We are a good team. We just got by the Spurs. I think, we're going to be back there at some point, and we're going to have another shot at it. So I was sort of confident even after the 06 final loss. Then we blew through the regular season, won 67 games. We were the heavy favorites to win that year. We beaten the Spurs like 3 out of 4, which was our huge rival in the West. So we're thinking we're going to have a pretty easy route going to the finals, and hopefully this year winning it. And then we run into Golden State. We had Nelly at the time, our old coach. He knew us to a T. He knew my game. Every time I try to move and spin, somebody else was coming, and I wasn't a great passer at all. So everything that he knew from coaching us, he obviously used against us in that series. And they were small, they were quick, they were athletic, they were good shooters. They had a lot of playmakers. So all of that really didn't really play in our favor, and they were hot at the time.
Yeah,
I think they had to win 7 or 8 games. We had to win out to get in the playoffs, and they snuck in and were red hot, and they beat us that year. They were better. We weren't prepared for them, and so I was so frustrated that summer. I was almost embarrassed of letting my city down, my organization, and I didn't really want to leave the house. So then I was like, I'm not going to stick around here. I'm going to go home. I want to go to Germany. I want to go somewhere in the world where nobody knows me, nobody talks basketball. And the NBA says, hold on, there might be a chance that you actually get the MVP. And I'm like, of all the years, this year I don't want it. We were the first number 1 seed at the time in a a 7-game series to lose against the 8 seed. So the last thing I wanted to do was take that MVP. And then sure enough, I had to wait about 2 weeks. And then they told me I got it, and I had to do the press conference.
All right, Dirk, we'll get to the good stuff right after this. All right, we're back with Mavericks legend Dirk Nowitzki. Now let's get to the good stuff. In 2011, you faced the Big Three down in Miami. You truly were America's team in Dallas. What was that series like, and what was it like winning against those guys?
It was unbelievable. Obviously, they were the heavy favorite. They just had built the Big Three, and they got on the stage saying they're going to win 5, 6, 7 championship, and so it was. They were the heavy favorites, and we had a good team that was experienced. They didn't have any egos. We had some older guys that knew how to play, and so that was an amazing year for us. We were healthy and ready, and played our best basketball really at the right time. So afterwards, it was when we won, it almost felt a little surreal. It felt like all the work that we put in, or I put in over 10 plus years in the league, paid off. And I got to say, it was very satisfying. It was a very proudful moment because, when you're in the city for over 10 years and here even you lose every year in the playoffs, you hear those rumblings, Dirk might not be the guy. He's not the finisher. He might not be the guy that can get you over the top. And of course, those things motivated me. But then when you actually get to the top, you feel that immense pride that you've done it and you've overcome all that. And so that was I used all those negative comments, all the playoff losses, the finals loss in 06. I think all that formed me in a better player, and I used all that experiences in 11 to really get us over the top.
The weird thing about that whole thing, Dirk, was I don't know how they do it in Germany, but when you win a championship, you're supposed to be out on the court to accept like all the cheers and everything else. You ran back into the locker room. What were you doing in the locker room before they presented the trophy?
Yeah, I needed a moment to myself, I think, to kind of reflect and to kind of get away from it for a second, and just I had a couple tears. I thought of some of the people that helped me along the way, and like I said, it's been over 10 years, 11 years in the league already, and so many stuff has been stuffed up inside of me, and I just need a few moments, and I laid down on like a bench in the shower and I said, I don't even want the trophy. I want to be by myself for a few minutes. And but then afterwards, I came back out and got the trophy. And that was, of course, the picture now that hangs in my house. But at the time, I said, I don't even want to be out there. I want to be by myself. So I'm glad I got forced to get back out there and go to the ceremony, because that is one picture I would hate to miss now.
A hero in Dallas for sure, but I bet a hero back in Germany as well. Dirk Nowitzki, who is included in former President George W. Bush's latest book, Out of Many, One, Portraits of America's Immigrants, is a man who is not only famous, said the 43rd president about Nowitzki, but he should be more famous for how he's helped people. And what was that like, hearing your name coming out of the mouth of the President of the United States?
Well, it was really cool. I've met Mr. President before. Obviously, he lives here and in our great city, so we have met before. And when I heard about that request that he wants me to be in the book, obviously I was tremendously humbled and honored. And of course, I said yes. And I think he did a great job. And we went to a Mavericks game this last season together and kind of promoted the book, and just spending some time with him was super great.
And here's the great thing. You got a biography coming out next March. I only get a chance to talk to you for about 20 minutes. It's called The Great Nowitzki, Basketball and the Meaning of Life. Tell me about what was the impetus behind you writing this, and what are you trying to say?
So I didn't write it. I'm gonna just come out and say that we had a great writer write it. He's not a sports writer. He's a real book author, and so I think it's a little different than the normal sports book. And he followed me the last probably 7 to 8 years of my career, and chronicled some stuff, and then wrote it in a great, fun fashion out of his view and the view of the fans. So I think it ended up really, really well. It came out in Germany about 2 years ago. It's been out for a while, and now they just translated it. They had to rewrite it a little bit for the American market, but it's going to come out here in the spring. And I'm excited. I think he did a great job of chronicling some of those things that happened in those 7-8 years. I think it's a fun little quick read.
Thanks to Dirk Nowitzki and for joining us today, and to all of you out there for watching on Boomer Esiason. I'll see you again soon right here on Game Time with Mets Hall of Fame catcher Mike Piazza.
I tell this story all the time. How many owners come to their players' bachelor party? He actually came to my bachelor party before I got married. So that's how close we've gotten, the relationship we built. And then he was super loyal to me by making me his franchise player. So it's always easy for me to pay that loyalty back to him.
Yeah, 14 years in the NFL. I had Mike Brown, I had Leon Hess, and I had, I'm trying to think, Bill Bidwell as owners. None of them would come to my bachelor party.